Hey everyone, it's Dragonrider, and I am not sure if I'm excited for Rogue or not. I know a lot of people are talking about how Rogue might potentially be still very, very good, and it's getting a lot of good cards, but I don't know. I did, for my deck, want to do something a little different than just like Miracle Rogue or kind of the same type of concoction or Thief Rogue that we've already had. Those might still be pretty good. A couple of the cards for each of those are leaving in rotation, but here's what I have for Rogue and Festival of Legends, and in my true Smork nature, I put together a Pirate Rogue. Yes, that's right, it's Pirate Rogue. So very, very low curve. You can see the curve down here, mostly 3 drops, but a ton of 1, a ton of 2, and 3 drops essentially is the deck. Now there is the Bootstrap Sunkeneer, just 1 copy at 5 mana, and then Krakatoa at 6. That's really the top end. Now, again, this is really, really aggressive, but I think there's some pretty neat cards in the new expansion that I think can kind of bring an archetype like this back. And a little bit of that is with the new weapon, Record Scratcher. Now, we don't really need to be having a lot of extra mana necessarily for a very low curve aggressive deck like this, but just the value you get off of having an extra weapon that potentially has that upside. If you do play this on curve, let's say on turn 3, you can attack turn 3, attack turn 4, and get an extra mana crystal. That might be enough to do something in a deck like this, so I think it's still valid, and there are a few combo cards, so maybe you get to refresh too. But being able to squeeze in an Eviscerate later in the game, like Eviscerate, or squeezing in something like the Fillet Fighter to deal 1 damage to your opponent's face, that really might actually make a huge difference in being able to close out a game or something like that, fitting in a Fog Sail Freebooter to deal 2 damage to your opponent's face. Those might be enough to just have a value off of the Record Scratcher for, restoring 2 mana. So I think it's pretty interesting, but there's also some things in here that buff weapons. We have a couple of the new things as well. Mic Drop here. It is a 3 mana draw 2 cards, very much like Arcane Intellect for Mage, but it has the finale bonus of giving your weapon +2 attack. And then I think the Harmonic Hip Hop is a really great spell as well. This one will swap, so the first turn it starts as dealing 1 damage, and then giving your weapon +3 attack, and then on the next turn, it will be deal 3 damage, give your weapon +1 attack. So this essentially could be kind of like an Eviscerate, or it could add to your weapon attack, and I think that that's really cool how flexible that is. But because the damage can go wherever, that can also go face. So I think it's a really good inclusion in a deck like this. Now, of course, Potion Belt, and getting a couple of those concoctions does seem really good. You can pick 3 damage, or you can pick card draw if you really need it. Or even just creating a minion is not like the worst thing in the world either. But I think especially for a deck like this, the damage and draw will probably be the 2 most key pieces that you could find from the concoctions. But I think between the new Record Scratcher, the Swordfish weapon that we will still have in Standard to be able to dredge, pick up a pirate, and give the pirate and the weapon attack, plus the weapons from Krakatoa, and that's without hero power too, but these better weapons outside of the hero power, that feels like a decent amount of weapons to be able to find a weapon to actually be able to buff with some of these other cards. The one Bootstrap Sunkeneer can kind of just help get a minion, maybe with taunt or something, out of the way so that you can hit face. Or maybe if it's just something that is kind of vital for your opponent to have and you really need it gone, you can use this. But I'm not sure if it's going to be that incredibly useful or not. It kind of will depend on how quickly this deck can actually get out on board and what the opponent's decks are doing. So that's why I just put in the 1. Puffer Fist also still staying in standard, so that's fantastic. Get all that extra damage to all enemies, including their face. So that's great. I already talked about Mic Drop. Of course, you also have the Cutlass Courier. If you're able to find this and pick it up, you can attack and draw a pirate specifically, not just any draw, but drawing a pirate. And then, of course, some like extra damage with things like the Fogsail Freebooter, the Eviscerates, the Fillet Fighter. I did put 1 Shadow Step in here just to try to put something back in your hand, like those damage specific minions that I was just talking about. You know, the Fillet Fighters, the Freebooters especially would be very good options. Of course, you gotta have a little bit more weapon buffing than just the Mic Drop, so Deadly Poison, a really good choice there. You know, in addition, maybe you don't run the Shadow of Demise. You could maybe run a second Shadow Step, but I really like the Shadow of Demise, and I think with some of the other spells, like the Deadly Poison, the Eviscerate, maybe a Concoction spell, the Shadow of Demise seems really great. And then, of course, a little bit of other, you know, mechanics to try to draw, like the Gone Fishing. This is also maybe a potential combo card that you can use to work with the Record Scratcher. That's pretty cheap as well. And then, of course, our good friend pirate, Jolly Roger, that has not seen any play. I'm hoping that in a deck like this, in a 4-set meta, maybe he gets to show himself a little bit in standard. You know, we're going to have some weapons. We're going to be attacking, so summoning another little extra pirate can hopefully help keep you on the board. And this seems like a really good 1-drop. So I'm throwing that in there, and it's a pirate. Maybe you get to dredge it out of the bottom with that Swordfish and have it as a 3/3 1-drop. So that would be pretty sweet. So this is my aggressive deck here that just wants to push damage with weapons, a little bit of over-the-top reach, and just tries to draw really quickly. And then switching over to our community-submitted deck, we have a deck from Nova2H. Thank you so much, Nova, for submitting this deck. We have a Concoction Combo Rogue for the new expansion here. I like this a lot. It also utilizes ETC here, so I'll cover what's included in that ETC band. But, of course, Prep, Shadow of Demise, Shadow Step, solid, just rogue cards that go in a lot of the rogue decks. So very reasonable to include them in here. So let's talk about kind of the new things that are included. You have the Breakdance, which is just this 1 mana shadow spell to return a minion to your hand and summon a dancer with its stats and rush. Now, it's kind of interesting because I think some of the minion choices kind of reflect wanting to have the Breakdance in here. Concoctor is not one of them, because you really wouldn't want to play the Breakdance on Concoctor and then summon a 1/2 rush, unless you really, really had to. But, of course, the Concoctor in there to add that concoction to your hand, along with some of the other kind of typical concoction package that we've already seen with the Ghoulish Alchemists and the Potion Belts. Very good inclusions. And the Putricide as well to get those. I really like the Putricide with the idea of the Breakdance as well to create some rush minions, even if it actually is on something like a Concoctor, because it's also more likely to die. So using the Putricide with that Breakdance really could be kind of interesting. And then, of course, the Serrated Bone Spike that's already been being played is definitely a good inclusion. Also, does look like Nova put Eviscerate in the deck, just like I did. So still kind of a very low curve aggressive deck. Everything is basically the ETC for 4 mana and cheaper. So very, very low curve deck, but very aggressive, just built to do kind of a bunch of damage, but in a different way than how I approached it, which I think is really cool. And one of those ways is the new Beatboxer. Now, there's only one included in here, which seems kind of reasonable. I think the tricky thing with the beatboxer here is you have to play it as a combo card, and then the 4 damage is split among all enemies. So if there are minions on the opponent's side of the board, they might just kind of go all over the place. And I think the aim with including a beatboxer in specifically a deck like this is you want that damage to be hitting your opponent's face. So without the kind of guarantee that will happen, I like that there's only 1 in here. Now, these other 2 are very interesting. The Bounce Around featuring Garona, which is 3 mana and it returns all the friendly minions to your hand. They cost 1 this turn. Now, this is not something that you want to play on curve because the effect only lasts for the turn that you play this. So this is going to be like a turn 5, 6, 7 probably type of play where with this deck, you're going to have a couple of minions on board. You're going to play Bounce Around and be able to play them again. The biggest ones are probably going to be the Beatboxer and maybe something like the Putricide or Concoctor to get more of those concoctions. But there's also a few new minions besides the Beatboxer that are included in here. One of those is this Disc Jockey. Now, it's only 2 mana, but it's a 4/1. Also a mech and a beast with combo, add a random combo card to your hand. So this will kind of just generate a little bit of value if you get that combo effect. But really, this is kind of meant to be used with the breakdance. So you put this back in your hand, you get a 4/1 rush minion, also going to be very easy to kill off and get extra value from Putricide with something like that. So that seems great. There are 2 of those. And then the other one is this Rhyme Spinner. Now it's 3 mana, 1/3 with Rush. It also has combo, gain +1/+1 for each other combo card you've played this game. Now, with it having Rush and an effect that adds what you've played for the game, I really do think that is pretty strong, especially in a way with a deck that's built like this from Nova. Very, very well thought out. I really like this deck. I'm very interested to see how the Rhyme Spinners do. And I think especially with the potential of like Rhyme Spinner plus doing the breakdance on a Rhyme Spinner, it will get all of those added stats. So that seems incredibly powerful if you're going to be able to pull something like that off. And this all seems very low curve. It seems like maybe you would want some draw or something else. Like, what is the win condition besides hoping that everything comes together and you can push some over the top damage? Well, that I think is where this ETC band manager comes in. If you can't seem to get some big minions on the board with some like repeat effects and like the Rhyme Spinners, if you can't close out the game with some damage, this ETC has Astalor, it has MC Blingtron, and it has Photographer Fizzle. I love these choices here. The Astalor, can definitely close out games on its own. It can help in some situations where you might need to just deal a little bit of damage, maybe gain some armor, and just forget about the third piece. The MC Blingtron is really, really interesting, and that could, especially with some of these other like damage spells and things like that, could close out the game because the Blingtron is one of the new legendaries for this expansion. It's going to equip your opponent. Well, you get a weapon, but your opponent gets a weapon that you basically deal an extra damage to them with every damage source. Very similar to the Void Touched Attendant in Priest, but they might not be able to replace that weapon. So being able to potentially choose that Blingtron, equip something, especially against a class that's not going to be able to replace that weapon, and then use some of these other cards seems fantastic. And then the Photographer Fizzle, maybe it's a game where you just want to get a lot of this value or you're drawing through your deck very quickly. You can kind of snapshot your hand, be able to put that photograph spell in your deck, draw it, and play it later to get a whole new hand of that stuff. which is all going to be very low cost things that you're going to be able to continue replaying and continue building up your combo amounts of things that you've played and create potentially some very, very large rhyme spinners and other minions with that breakdance. So I think this is a really, really cool use of this ETC. And ETC is definitely, for me at least, something that I kind of expected to see in a lot of slower decks and, really kind of use like tech type cards. But I think this is a really cool way of using it that's kind of just adding to the potential of the deck without being necessarily like tech cards in the ETC band. So I really like this one, and this is something that I definitely might try out. I hope that it does work. I hope the repetition of the combo cards and putting these like bouncing things and these rhyme spinners, I hope this kind of combo and how many combo cards you've played in the turn end up being pretty good, like the SI cards were for that questline Rogue when SI agents were everywhere and SI 7 cards were having to be played a bunch during a game. I think this can be a very similar effect. So I really like this. I think this is super cool. Oh, what do you think of these decks? So let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much to everyone who has been supporting the channel and helping me just continue to grow. I love doing these videos. I love doing all of this. So what other types of things would you like to see after the expansion comes out? Let me know those as well in the comments. Thank you again. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out this video where I went over some priest decks, and I tried to avoid Shadow Priest because I do think that's still going to be popular, and I wanted to try something different. So check that one out, and I'll see you in the next one.